Right, so everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the third day of CANIE Climate Action Week. And for this session, we're going to have the COP28 reflections and COP29 preparations, which will be presented by Savo Holeta, who is an internationalization specialist for Durban University of Technology, and Marian Mensa Sulez La Riviere, who is the founder of the Climate Innovation Education Lab. So for those of you who are not yet familiar with CANIE, CANIE started in 2019, and it is a 100% volunteer-run organization, and we have a global board with representation from different countries around the world. We also have regional chapters from Europe, Americas, and Oceania, and global working groups that are furthering our vision and mission of the international education sector's contribution to mitigating climate change. And in the 5 years that CANIE has been running, we've had several awards, which you can see here. And also we now have over 750 plus practitioners, active practitioners from different institutions around the world. We also have 65 plus CANIE Accord signatories. CANIE Accord is a set of commitments that institutions such as NAFSA, EAIE, and Universitas 21 commit to for, again, furthering the sector's contribution to combating climate change. And for those of you who aren't yet members, CANIE is free to join, and you can join by going to this website, canie.org/join, which will give you access to information about things happening around the international education sector, networking opportunities, and again, with CANIE being a climate action network, this is an opportunity for us to connect with other practitioners, professionals around the world in order for us to be able to share our perspectives and learn from each other. And again, since we are a 100% volunteer-run organization, without the help of our sponsors, such as University of Tasmania, we won't be able to run events like this. So I will play a quick video from the University of Tasmania.
How do I feel about the sustainability agenda? Passionate but impatient. As fast as we go, we've always got to be going faster. My colleagues are doing remarkable things, but every time we do a remarkable thing, I know we've got to do more because we have to solve this now.
The University of Tasmania has a very clear, holistic sustainability agenda. We have embedded it into our overall strategic plan for the university. It has its own framework for sustainability that encompasses 4 main areas of activity that are to be taken into account in all of our decision-making and activities.
The projects we choose always deliver additional environmental and social co-benefits, for example, biodiversity protection, or the creation of jobs for local communities.
All right. And aside from the University of Tasmania, we also have our other sponsor, Alethea Global Cooperative, which is a worker cooperative and sustainability training consultancy built by members with relevant international education experience and knowledge to support the required transformation for a more equitable, climate conscious, and sustainable sector. And here are some words from CJ Tremblay. And you will be able to view this because we're recording our session and we will put it up on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet followed our social media channels, such as Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, please subscribe. And lastly, again, we are grassroots and volunteer led and run. So if you or your organization can help support the ongoing work of CANIE, please visit this website. And so again, we're on the 3rd day. So these are our final workshops or sessions that we're having for today. And tomorrow we're going to have regional meetings for each of our chapters. And please feel free to join the respective chapter that's most applicable to you. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Savo and Marian lead the session. Thank you.
Marianne, I think because you are on your phone, I can share from my side.
Thank you very much, Savo. So good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I am, one of the CANIE founding member because I believe in the important mission of CANIE in integrating climate action in international education. And I was the president of CANIE Europe until last year.
Good day, good morning, good evening. I'm not sure where people are in the world. My name is Savo Heleta, and I'm a member of CANIE Academic Advisory Board, also just a member of CANIE, and I'm an internationalization specialist and researcher in international education, affiliated with Durban University of Technology in South Africa.
Great. So today we are going really to share our reflection on the accreditation of CANIE as an observer organization of UN climate change, UNFCCC, and also our participation at COP28 and a reflection for the preparation of CANIE's participation in COP29. So let me just quickly share a little bit of background on UNFCCC. I guess most of you probably know that it's governing body of the UN, which is in charge of climate change, which is really in charge of coordinating the global response to the threat of climate change. And the ultimate objective of UNFCCC is really to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at a point that will prevent dangerous, the dangerous impact on human society and enable actually human development. And also enable natural ecosystem to adapt. UNFCCC is an intergovernmental body, which is made of members which are called parties and which represent countries, nations, apart from one which is actually a regional organization. But it's really at this level that parties are represented. There are 4 negotiation sessions every year, and the largest is the COP, the Conference of Parties, that is held each time every year in a different part of the world, so that all continents and are represented and can host the COP. And so what UNFCCC also does is that it keeps the registry of CO2 emissions, and it guarantees the quality of information that all reported to the Conference of Parties. And also something that needs to be mentioned in the context of CANIE is that the COP is also responsible for the global climate action implementation under what we called the Marrakesh Partnership, which is actually really about engaging non-state actors, cities, region, investors, private sector in climate action. Also with the ambition of keeping the temperature rise by 1.5 degrees. Okay, quickly, you know, the COP is actually physically structured. You know, the conference is structured into different areas. The most restricted area is the one that is reserved for the negotiations. Again, the negotiations are at a country level, I mean, nations level, but also they allow for the input of non-country actors, such as NGOs, or also other international organizations which are part of the UN system, or also, you know, the World Bank, for instance, is there, or the regional also organizations such as the OECD, and also, you know, I mean, all these organizations also can actually give some input to the negotiators. So that's happening in the blue zone. Then, you know, the areas that are open to the public, or the green zone, that is outside of, you know, the negotiation arena. But that last year at COP28 was a very large area that could welcome a lot of people to get more sensitized to climate action. Okay, so that's one thing that I wanted to highlight. And I will show in the next slide also that, you know, the conference is for 2 weeks, and each day is actually dedicated to one theme, including youth and education. So CANIE had to go through a long application process. It's a 2-year process, very formal, that is reviewed by UNFCCC, and requires a proof that CANIE is active, that it has some influence in its area of action, and so we got actually the confirmation. I mean, our application was approved by the UNFCCC General Assembly that happened at the very beginning of the COP on 30th of November 2023. And then we received the letter of confirmation after the COP at the end of January, so this year. So it's a very you know, recent accreditation, but it's really interesting because to my knowledge, there is an association of international universities that is accredited. Apart from this one, we are one of the rare international organization in the international education sector that has been accredited by UNFCCC as an observer organization. And so what it means, we will see also what it means and how, I mean, that's the purpose of this session, is to see how to move ahead and how to contribute to the you know, discussion and debate and knowledge about climate action in international education, and how you know, we it should actually be emphasized, because we have, I mean, the number of sectors represented among the NGOs that are accredited is very large. Why is education really left aside and international education almost not represented? Is really a question that I don't really have any answer, except that, you know, these are really maybe two different worlds that don't talk to each other. So maybe CANIE can have a very important and pioneer role in bringing this voice into this negotiation arena. And we were, you know, it's of course, when UNFCCC provides the accreditation, they provide also the number of people who are allowed to attend this process. And we were, right now, we were allowed only 2 people. And so it's very restricted, very limited. But just to give you an idea, New York University, for instance, has 5 seats. So Harvard, same. So, you know, I mean, it's not to be elitist or something like that, but the fact that we have 2 seats is already something, even if it's very limited for our organization. So COP28 happened from 20th of November last year until 13th of December. And as you can see, there were days. I mean, here are the themes of you know, each day. You have first the opening, and then the world you know, a high-level summit where you have all heads of states who come and attend the summit, because we will see that actually a lot of the negotiation work happens between the COP. You know, when the COP opens, it already opens with an agenda and also some text and documents that are going to be negotiated. That's really the final round. So at the opening of the conference, each state has actually the opportunity to make a declaration on priorities, and then there are days dedicated to each you know, domain, and this year some emphasis was put on health, on also food, and you can see that I think it was on 8th of December, you had one day dedicated to youth, children, education, and skills. So it's and of course there are some cross-cutting team as well, which are about, you know, the role of technology, keeping an inclusive process, frontline communities on adaptation that are directly impacted by climate change, and finance also is a cross-cutting issue. So there were 85,000 accredited delegates this year. I think it's also due to the place where the COP happened. You know, it was in the Expo that Dubai that you know, hosted the Universal Expo in I think it's when 2020, after COVID, 2022. So very large vicinity, very well organized, and there was also the, you know, objective of the UAE to prove that they could organize this these big events, they could host the big event, and that they could somehow, have a kind of leadership on this area of climate change, which of course rose a lot of controversy. But I think that Sabo will talk about this later. Yes, even here we can say that there were, of course, a lot of delegates representing gas, coal, and this type of fossil fuels industry. Education was there. Actually, for the first time, there was a pavilion dedicated to education, but frankly speaking, it was far from being significant. And the problem with education is that it goes from kindergarten until higher education. And if you looked at the pavilion of education, really the part dedicated to higher education was very, very, very small. And most of it was dedicated to primary and secondary education in the UAE. So not really something that is really at the size of the catalyst role that education can have on climate action. Okay, so next slides, please. Thank you. Okay, so would you like to?
Yes, I think I'm in here. No, thank you very much. I think this introduction is so important to understand, COP and to understand the structures and what goes on and who's involved and what possibly organizations like CANIE and us in international education at our different institutions around the world, in what way we can possibly get involved and what we can consider doing in the future. I'll just briefly talk about some of the highlights of COP28 and what was achieved. Because this is high-level negotiation and high-level diplomacy, and a lot of, as Marianne has said, a lot of work happens in between the COPs in preparation for the actual gathering for 2 weeks. And last one was in Dubai. We're talking about high-level, intense negotiations that led to a number of drafts and documents being presented and then being critiqued by different countries and their delegates, their diplomats, by various representatives of the civil society. There were people from universities and all kinds of interested delegates who were there to voice their opinions, to critique, to give another other sets of ideas and all that. But the COP28 ultimately, with a lot of controversies that you can read about in the news, came up with what's known as the UAE consensus, an agreement emerging from COP28. And we will be able to share via CANIE all the links to all these different documents so that people can actually go and read. And they're very substantial documents speaking about a lot of different things. The UAE consensus, for the first time speaks about the need to transition from fossil fuels. And they specifically say in a just, orderly, and equitable manner during this decade, in order to reach net zero emissions by 2050. But it's always important to highlight that, we can put anything on paper. There's no question about it. We can write all the big goals and visions and all kinds of different things, but the detail is important. How are we getting there? In what way are we committing? And all the different things. And I'll just mention some of the critiques on the next slide as well. So key highlights of COP28, apart from the UAE consensus, are the the agreement by all the parties that were participating in the COP on the global stocktake, which is basically which was looking, it was an inventory of climate action since the Paris Agreement. What is happening, what's being done, what needs to happen, what are the gaps, what do we need to do, you know, to 2030 and beyond 2030. The global stocktake calls on countries around the world to transition away from fossil fuels. But again, when you read carefully the global stocktake document, you start to identify issues and problems with the language in the global stocktake. So while it is for the first time, you know, some people say for the first time, it's a very radical, very important document, and it speaks the language we need today. Critics are saying, well, it does mention the need to transition away from fossil fuels, but it's not talking about the urgency that we need. The world is basically, in many ways, the climate. We're not talking about, we're not talking about climate change. We're talking about climate destruction, and we see things every single day happening, and in many parts of the world, in the global south, happening far quicker, and things are far worse than in other parts of the world. So, while the language is there, the urgency is not necessarily there, and the tools are not there to get us where we need to be by 2030 and by 2050. Again, the loss and damage fund, or climate reparations, that the way we call it in some circles, it is there. It is in the agreement, but again, the funding that is needed for loss and damage is not there. The commitments are not there. That the fund, so basically, we know that we need, $400 billion annually, but we don't even have $1 billion. So how are we going to fix things that need to be fixed without money? It's great, it's on paper. The importance of it is on paper, but that's not going to save lives. That's not going to save small island states that are going to be flooded. Again, more than 100 countries endorsed increasing reliance on the renewables, but in many parts of the world where there is no funding available for this, nobody's talking about how will this be funded. And so you can see how, again, as I said at the beginning, you can put anything in writing, but if you don't have the way forward in terms of how these things are going to be achieved, then you are largely academic in your thinking. There are various critiques that are very important to read about the COP28 agreements, and I mentioned some of them here, in the previous slide. There's a lot of very kind of, I would call it, fluffy language that doesn't really, we note and we welcome action and all different things, but when we say, okay, so we note the need and we welcome action, when we ask, so specifically, can we see what steps are going to be taken this year, next year, where the funding is going to come from? None of that is there. So and I think for us, and people who are in higher education, we ask our students to think critically. We have to also think critically about these global documents and ask questions and read in between the lines. So yes. Again, I'm not going to read all these different things. We will make the slides available to anyone, and you can read in detail what different groups have been saying. But the language that we would like to see there, the action that follows the language, is not necessarily there. And this is why many activists, climate activists, have been complaining about, and I think it's so important to have activists and critical thinkers to be part of COP in order to ask these questions, because diplomats don't always do that. Very briefly, we also thought we could just say a few things about our own personal reflections on what we saw at COP, and I'll go first and just say that Marianne has said this was an impressive venue. It's literally expo city, expo venue that was built in the middle of the desert for the recent expo. It was supposed to be Expo 2020, but because of the pandemic, it was at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. It's an impressive venue. It's beautiful. It can host events like this and bigger. But going to COP with the climate crisis in mind, considering what needs to happen, how quickly change has to happen, how radical change has to be in order to save what can be saved. What I saw at COP was high-level tech, untested tech, advertising all over the place, seeing who was exhibiting and considering the money that is needed to exhibit and how that excludes many organizations, many people. I came out of the space very disappointed. I just kept looking around. I had a colleague with me who on one day from University of Arizona in the United States, works very closely with activists on different things around the world. And he kept asking me, so this is it, you know, how is this possible? And we kept just kind of looking and talking and thinking. I mean, it was literally, you know, the tech is going to save us. Tech is going to save anything. Basically, the message I got from what I was seeing was that, you know, we don't really need to radically change our actions because, you know, these tech companies are going to come and save the day. It's kind of like a Hollywood movie message. And so it was very difficult to see all this and think about how we're going to get to where we need to be. You know, if you and even going into the education pavilion, it was about selling the products. It was literally another international conference about higher education, you know, volunteering, studying abroad, you know, these educational products for this and that, you know, whatever. It was very difficult coming with a critical lens. It was very difficult to feel hopeful and optimistic. So that just a bit of a touch that I think is very important. Marianne, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, well, I mean, I think that, you know, it's Savo, I would totally concur to, you know, the fact that this COP can look overwhelming if we consider the work that has to be accomplished and you know, looking at the different perspective and the wide range of perspective and conflicting interests that are represented in COPs. And that's something that is always, you know, mind-boggling and not really, you know, leading to a positive assessment. So I will try to actually consciously complement your view with some positive things that I can see about this COP. One thing still is that we are talking about 1.5 degrees, and you know the Paris Agreement mentioned 2 degrees and preferably 1.5 degrees. I think right now in the talking, in the discussion, there is this reference to 1.5, which looks like a paradox because we actually reached 1.5 last year, not permanently, fortunately, but we still reach it. So, you know, there is this kind of dichotomy, and probably to give a sense of urgency. When you hear the Secretary General of the UN, or even Simon Steele, also who is, you know, the head of UNFCCC, the sense of urgency is there. And then if you listen to, you know, at the opening of the COP about the statement made by head of states, and you listen to the seat, you know, the small islands, for instance, declaration, this is heartbreaking, really, what's happening, and it's really where a place where you can, unique place, I think, where you can have within 2 weeks a clear picture of what's happening, even if with this very particular environment. If you listen to the declaration, if you meet the people, because people, you have people from all over the world who really meet and discuss about climate change, and you have all, from the fossil fuel lobbyists to the young people who are fighting for the survival of their community on an island. And so that's maybe what the COP is, allowing us, is to really have a kind of direct account of what's happening around the world due to climate change, and then also making us really conscious of our interdependence, meaning that unfortunately what happens right now in India or in the UAE will affect us here in Europe, even if we try to reduce our carbon emission and be as virtuous as possible, putting all this governance. Yes, we are all interdependent. We are all on the same boat on this climate change. So I think that's something that I always think. This is why I think it's worth bringing all these people together, despite, of course, the cost in terms of CO2 emissions. That's, yes, it is emitting, and even if we offset our carbon emissions individually, the result is that it's still a very emitting event. But at the same time, how do you really bring people in the same boat? And this time, I must say, because of the attraction and the location of the COP, there was a large attendance from South Asia. Pakistan, India, where there were a lot of people who are actually largely represented in the UAE, in Dubai, for instance. Maybe 2/3 of the population come from South Asia. And so to me, that was a positive sign, because India right now is, I think, the second largest emitter in terms of CO2 emissions, and also one of the most vulnerable country. So, to bring India on the boat in terms of climate action is absolutely essential. And I think that at least there have been some kind of awareness raising and definitely also some funding, because the UAE has created a $30 billion fund to foster the energy transition in this in the global south and in this region. And also maybe my comment is that also something that I found interesting also in this COP was the fact that legacy. I mean, these countries have different rules, and they are ruled by how do you call this? Long families that have been there for a long time, and that have built and achieved the construction and the building of the creation of Dubai, for instance, and all the wealth in the UAE. And I think one of the values of legacy is very important in these countries. At least it was very shown very often, legacy. And that may be a sign of hope for the future, when, head of states in this region think about the legacy that they will give to their children, to the young generation, to really take meaningful and impactful action. And so that was maybe a long comment, sorry, because we want to keep some time for really also, yes, the preparation for the COP29. I think we don't have much time to speak about this, but it will happen in Azerbaijan, in Baku. To me, it was a kind of a shock, to be honest, that, this country is chosen to host the COP, but this is it. So we will need maybe to create a special interest group within CANIE to reflect on how we can prepare for the COP29, because things happened also in between. And, we could join also some groups, and UNFCCC really encourage NGOs and non-party organizations to regroup and, to give common statement and to optimize actually the input given to the negotiators. So I have a question from, it's, well, I mean, we have two questions. Shall we address them now? Savo, do you agree?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting because the question we got in the comments, speaks to the questions that we just showed on the screen. So would like to ask you, what is it that we should be doing? We as individuals, academics, researchers, scholars, we as representatives of our universities, institutions, and also joined together within CANIE, what do we need to think about? What do we need to do? In what way we can think about COP and involvement, and how do we play a meaningful role or a more meaningful role in promotion of climate action, justice, just transition, climate justice, and all that. It's a question for you, for us.
Yes, no, I mean, it's really, I think it's a really great question, because, when we speak about education as being a catalyst for change, everyone would agree. It looks obvious, but then when you look at, the part that education is allowed in this discussion, I mean, almost none. So obviously, there is a gap, and in my views, it's probably because also there have been a lot of focus on science to inform, the climate negotiation, which is very important. But from the research, so higher education, yes, is present at the COP, in the form of science and research, but education then is not really part of the discussion. And it's maybe like in higher education or universities, you have always science and research that are put first, and then maybe education comes second. I don't know. That's at least my own experience in my institution. But, clearly there is a role to of input that CANIE can have, because we have really also members from various parts of the world with who contribute during our meetings to sharing their experience and how they can mobilize young people and empower young people to take action, and how also they can decrease, reduce the CO2 emissions within their own campus. So this is why I think we have been accredited by UNFCCC, because there is this gap maybe in the representation of observer organization. And just to Veronica, I think, the one thing is we are all on the same boat, all countries, everyone in the world is, embarked on this journey. We have to be aware that we come with different values, with different history, with different economy, and with different culture. And what was very, very, very clear over there at COP28 was very this flashy, this kind of pump and make it big and so on. It's also relating to the culture in the UAE. That's, you have big cars, you have big hotels, you have high rise, and this is a culture. So it's obviously a very different COP than the COP in Glasgow, which was much more grassroots and, involving the civil society, and very, very different. But we have to take this into consideration. And how do you engage people from South Asia, who are really looking at this flashy culture into climate action is interesting. Yes, so a COP, thank you, Ainsley. I think the COP engagement group would be really, really interesting, and we could, really further discuss how to formulate and statement, and how can we contribute to the different entities that represent NGOs, because or education. And I think in my slides, in the last slides, I have put some, how usually NGOs, observer organization, or regrouped. We have met some representative of the higher education climate network of networks that is there ready to welcome us within the networks of networks. So, and they are directly speaking with the high champion climate, global climate action. The Marrakesh Partnership has appointed some champions on the race to net zero and on the race to adaptation. And this network of networks speaks to them directly. So I think it would be interesting to really be part of this network. UNESCO has also an initiative on greening education that they want to also, because their objective is the integration of climate action in education, on campus, in curriculum, by 2030, sorry. But it covers primary, secondary, and tertiary education. So that's a very broad objective. And then, Savo, you were mentioning the Commonwealth, the Association of Commonwealth Universities, that is also very active. So we are coming to the end. We haven't had much time to discuss about it, but I think we would. Let me see.
If I can just come in. So in preparation for this engagement, Marianne and I met, and And we spoke also about, so what are we trying to get with this engagement? And one of our key hopes of this was to just introduce this discussion, to be the step one. And as Marianne has said, one of our recommendations is to perhaps have CANIE consider to have a, whatever we call it, special interest group or whatever it is, to think more in depth about CANIE's roles, responsibilities, networking possibilities around COPs, and to also start unpacking the work that needs to happen in between the COPs and for the COP, and also to think critically about CANIE's engagement and involvement in the COP. We have to think about, how do we act around this? Because we talk about climate action, climate justice, but we don't want to have now a plane full of people representing CANIE going to a next COP. So there are a lot of things. I mean, we're talking about working with other networks and associations and experts and community organizations and activists to perhaps think about a state or something to develop I don't know, documents that talk about the action that needs to happen and what we're doing, what we need to be doing. There's also something that we just needed to want to mention now at the end. Marianne was talking about the structure of COPs and the blue zone where CANIE has 2 representatives, but you can also have people in the green zone where in Dubai a lot of engagements around education were taking place. So while there is a limitation of 2 official delegates that can attend the negotiations, there are other parts of COP, well, at least there were in Dubai, we don't know what's going to happen in Baku, where additional engagements could be happening. And also we need to start to think about, whether we can find people who are close to the locations of where COP is taking place so that we minimize the emissions, but still have people interested in climate action in international education to be there. So I'm hoping that the people or some of the people who are here and who will be in the other webinar later today will consider joining that, whatever we call it, special interest group or whatever it is, to talk more, because this is just a very basic introduction. We need everybody to read all those long documents that we had to read to think about, and then come and really think what we could be doing more or better in the future.
Yes, I think it's a very good conclusion. And to Veronica, yes, I've heard about the inner development goals, and they are very interesting. They develop very interesting tool about how do we change and how do we integrate our attitude and beliefs. It's really it's an interesting network as well. And yes, promoting the CANIE Accord as the next COP could be very, yes, of course, a very important and very beneficial. Even if we need to be aware that there are not so many international higher education institution, but it is certainly a place to promote the CANIE Accord. So we are coming to the end of this session. Is that something that we need to take on with Ainsley and the Secretariat of CANIE Global?
Can I jump in? I don't want to preempt the nature of the second session that you'll run and the conversations that will happen, but I hear the challenge and the opportunity, and I am optimistic that we can find a way for CANIE members from across the globe, including those located on Pacific Islands who are currently going under, as well as those located close to Baku, who can contribute to planning for how CANIE engages in November this year, but also for how we think about how we use the time beforehand to craft a message or determine allies such that we are more impactful come November. I wanted to say thank you very much. I think your contributions are really insightful. I learned a lot today, and I have a pile of reading, thank you, Savo, to do later. But this was valuable. I hope that the consequent session is also, and I look forward to regrouping after this to consider how, as a collective, as a network of members, we think about how to move forward.
Thank you, everyone. And so let's continue the discussion. On this CANIE participation to COP, but in a different, focused group on this. I think it would be really, really important and helpful to contribute to the discussion, to the climate discussion that are happening at the COP.
All right, so thank you, everyone. And again, this recording will be made available as well as the slides that Savo and Marian has. So we have a lot of reading to do in preparation for the next COP. So again, thank you for your time and for your patience with our technical issues earlier. And I wish you all a good evening, good day. And we'll see you hopefully in more focused discussions regarding the next COP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.